Welcome to Warfacts Hub. I'm thrilled to have you here as we uncover the real moments and forgotten battles of history. Today's episode takes us into the heart of Victory at Sea, Ep 15 D-Day. Before we dive into this incredible story, if you enjoy historical content like this, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. It really helps us continue bringing you these amazing stories from history. Now, let's begin our journey. In the early hours before dawn, the world seemed eerily still along the Normandy coast. The dark waters of the English Channel lapped rhythmically against the hulls of countless vessels, from mighty battleships to small landing crafts, each bobbing with the anticipation of the day ahead. The sky above was vast and starless, a black canvas waiting to be painted with the history that would unfold with the coming light. Lieutenant James Jim Harrison stood on the deck of a transport ship, peering through the gloom toward the invisible shoreline that lay ahead. The salty sea air stung his eyes and filled his lungs, a harsh reminder that he was far from the safety of home. He pulled his coat tighter against the biting wind, trying to steel himself for the task at hand. Jim had spent countless nights imagining this moment, but now that it was upon him, his mind was a maelstrom of fear and determination. The ship was alive with the subdued clatter of activity. Men murmured in hushed tones, their movements deliberately quiet as if they dared not disturb the fragile calm. The clinking of metal and the occasional cough seemed amplified in the pre-dawn darkness. Jim glanced at his watch, its luminous face reading 0345 hours. The time for Operation Overlord was nearing. Nearby, Private Thomas Riley sat with his back against a crate of supplies, meticulously checking his gear for the 100th time. His fingers trembled slightly as he reloaded his rifle, the cold steel a reassuring weight in his hands. Riley was still young, barely 19, with sandy hair and wide blue eyes that mirrored a mix of excitement and trepidation. In the dim light, he could make out the silhouette of Sergeant Michael O'Reilly, pacing rhythmically along the deck. O'Reilly, a seasoned veteran with grizzled features and sharp, piercing eyes, embodied experience and grit. To his men, he was a pillar of strength. Many had looked to him for guidance since their rigorous training began. As he strode back and forth, O'Reilly occasionally paused to exchange a word or a nod, his presence a steady anchor in a sea of uncertainty. "Remember, boys, stick to the plan. Keep your heads down and move forward." O'Reilly spoke quietly but firmly, his voice carrying a gravity that silenced the murmurs. "The first few minutes are everything. Stay sharp." Jim approached the sergeant, his own heart thudding in his chest. "Sarge, how are the men holding up?" O'Reilly offered a tight-lipped smile, one that barely reached his eyes. "About as well as can be expected, Lieutenant. We've drilled them hard. They're nervous, but ready." Jim nodded, taking a measure of comfort in the sergeant's confidence. "Good. We'll need every bit of that readiness in the hours to come." The ship swayed gently, the only sound now the ceaseless murmur of the sea. A thin line of gray began to etch itself along the horizon as dawn approached, and with it, a sense of urgency. Jim turned his gaze eastward, imagining the beachhead, the unseen defenses, and the waiting enemy. Miles away, on the bluffs overlooking the beaches, the German defenses lay in silence, unaware of the storm about to descend upon them. Major Klaus Hartmann absorbed the tranquility of the early morning, his eyes sweeping the shoreline below. Though not yet 40, Hartmann's face bore the marks of long years of conflict, lines etched by worry and stress, his sandy hair flecked with gray. The past weeks had been fraught with tension. Uncertain whispers of an Allied invasion had reached every ear in the German command, yet the exact details remained shrouded in mystery. Hartmann's orders were clear: maintain vigilance and hold the line at all costs. He took a deep breath, the tang of the sea mingling with the earthiness of the coastal breeze, a reminder of the world outside the war. As the first hint of light crept across the sky, Hartmann reviewed his deployments in his mind. Machine gun nests and artillery positions dotted the cliffs, their barrels aimed resolutely at the sea, ready to unleash their fury. The radio crackled to life beside him, a scratchy voice breaking the silence. "Major Hartmann, all positions report readiness, no activity spotted." "Understood," Hartmann replied, a tinge of unease curling in his voice. "Keep me posted on any developments. Stay alert." As he clipped the receiver back into place, he pondered the faces of the men under his command. Young, eager, some frightened, each a thread in the tapestry of war, bound by duty and fate to this moment in history. The weight of responsibility pressed heavily upon him, yet he had long come to terms with the burdens of leadership. Back aboard the transport ship, the horizon finally began to reveal itself. The murky pre-dawn mist lifted, unveiling the vast armada that surrounded them. Ships stretched as far as the eye could see, an impressive testament to Allied industrial might. Jim surveyed the scene, a profound sense of scale dawning on him. This was it, the culmination of planning, sacrifice, and hope. Each vessel was a small but crucial cog in a grand machine, all pointed toward a shared and monumental goal. The enormity of it both awed and unsettled him. The ship's loudspeaker crackled, the captain's voice booming across the deck. "All hands prepare for landing. We'll hit the beach in 30 minutes. Around Jim, the men sprang into action, checking weapons, adjusting gear, and offering silent prayers. Riley stood and joined a group gathered around a map, his youthful enthusiasm a foil to the grim determination etched into the faces of his comrades. O'Reilly moved among them, issuing final instructions and words of encouragement. "Remember your training, lads. We're counting on each other," he urged. Clapping Riley on the shoulder, "You're ready for this, son." Riley offered a taut smile, his eyes betraying a hint of anxiety. "Yes, Sarge, I won't let you down." As the minutes ticked by, the air buzzed with a palpable tension. The sea, once a gentle rocking cradle, now felt alive with a turbulent energy, as if aware of the impending clash. Jim felt his pulse quicken, an intoxicating mix of fear and resolve rising within him. 10 minutes, barked the captain, his voice slicing through the noise. Jim took a deep breath, gathering his thoughts, trying to steady his racing heart. He glanced at his men, a group of disparate souls now united by a singular purpose. On the distant horizon, the first glimmers of dawn pierced the darkness, casting a golden light over the water. As the glow spread, it revealed the shape of the land they were destined to claim, Normandy, where their fate would be decided. As the ships neared the shore, chaos erupted. The sun was barely peeking over the horizon when the first artillery shells began to whistle through the air, a terrifying overture of the battle to come. The mighty naval vessels unleashed a thunderous barrage, their guns belching fire and smoke, trying to silence the well-entrenched fortifications on the cliffs. On board the landing craft, Jim gripped the edge as each concussion rocked the vessel, water spraying up in icy torrents. Around him, men braced themselves, the roar of the bombardment mingling with the mechanical whine of the motors driving them toward land. "Hold tight, men," shouted O'Reilly, his voice somehow cutting through the din. "We're almost there." As they approached the beach, German machine guns opened up, spitting death with chilling precision. Bullets struck the water like angry hornets, each impact sending up a spray that glistened in the growing light. In the chaos, Jim's mind snapped into focus. "Stay low and move fast. Follow the plan," he barked, signaling the men to prepare for disembarkation. He could feel the craft lurch beneath him as it ground into the sand, the ramp lowering with a creak that reverberated deep within him. The moment the ramp touched down, hell broke loose. German gunners concentrated their fire on the exposed landing craft, turning the shoreline into a deadly gauntlet. "Go, go, go!" Jim shouted, leaping into the frigid knee-deep water, his boots slipping on the slick sand below. Around him, men plunged forward, their forms silhouetted against the rising sun, each one a target on the exposed beach. Riley stumbled beside him, his breath coming in ragged gasps. The cold seemed to seep into his bones, but adrenaline spurred his limbs onward. He cast a quick glance at O'Reilly, who urged the men on with fierce determination, his voice an unwavering beacon amidst the discord. Jim ducked as a spray of bullets kicked up sand nearby, forcing him to weave desperately toward a small rise that offered scant cover. The world narrowed to the immediate. The sting of salt, the acrid smell of gunpowder, the cries of the wounded and dying, all fused into a single searing reality. They scrambled for cover, the jagged edges of the metal obstacles on the beach offering only minimal protection. The cacophony of war enveloped them, a symphony of destruction as men shouted orders, screamed in pain, and the guns roared ceaselessly. Heedless of the chaos, Jim found himself inches from Riley, whose face was pale but resolute, the fear in his eyes tempered by a stubborn will to survive. "We have to reach the seawall." Jim shouted, his voice barely audible above the din. "Riley, cover me." With a nod of understanding, Riley raised his rifle, firing toward the enemy positions in short, controlled bursts. Jim seized the moment, sprinting across the murderous stretch of sand, his mind a singular focus on the objective. Behind him, the relentless push of men continued, each step a gamble with fate. High above, Hartman watched the scene unfolding below with mounting disbelief. The sheer scale of the assault was staggering, waves of men pouring onto the beaches despite the withering fire from the cliffs. "Major, our lines are reporting heavy engagements. The enemy is persistent," a young lieutenant beside him reported, his voice edged with urgency. Hartman nodded grimly, his mind racing. "Maintain pressure. We cannot let them gain a foothold." Yet even as he spoke, he could see their defenses beginning to strain under the relentless pressure. Allied battleships continued to pound the German positions, while the relentless wave of soldiers pressed forward, undeterred by the mounting casualties. The radio crackled again, each report adding to the tapestry of desperation and determination that comprised the battlefield. "Hold them back," Hartman commanded, though aware that the tide was slowly turning against them. Despite the chaos, he couldn't help but marvel at the bravery of the soldiers below. Both friend and foe, each one driven by duty, by a cause larger than themselves. In that moment, Hartman understood the irrevocable truth of war. It forged men, tested their mettle, and claimed them indiscriminately. Back on the beach, Jim's squad finally reached the relative shelter of the seawall, breaths coming in ragged gasps, each man acutely aware of their precarious situation. The bluffs loomed ahead, a daunting barrier that needed to be breached. Huddled behind the wall, O'Reilly assessed their next move. "We need to break through. Spread out and find a way up the cliffs," he instructed, his voice steady despite the fury surrounding them. Jim nodded, exchanging a brief look with Riley. Words were unnecessary, they both knew the stakes. With a quick motion, he signaled the men to move, their figures darting from cover as they sought a path through the chaos. Crawling over slick, bloodied sand, Jim led the way, his senses heightened to every nuance of the landscape. The uneven ground, the distant bark of German commands, the occasional lull in gunfire that spoke of opportunity. Each moment was a test of nerve and skill, a calculated risk in the theater of war. Over there, Riley pointed to a break in the enemy fire, a narrow path winding toward a faint trail up the cliffside. Without hesitation, Jim directed the men forward, their movements quick and determined despite the imminent danger. The climb was treacherous, the ground slippery and unforgiving. Taking turns covering each other's advance, they slowly ascended, sweat mingling with the grit and grime of battle. Jim's muscles burned with exertion, but he forced himself onward, driven by the unwavering belief in their mission. Riley clambered up beside him, his face smeared with dirt, yet his eyes shone with an indomitable spirit. "We can do this, Lieutenant. We have to." The climb was a blur of exertion and resolve, the crack of rifles echoing as they neared the top. With every pull and grasp, the proximity to their objective became more tangible, and Jim's focus sharpened into a razor's edge. Finally, reaching the crest, Jim peered cautiously over the top. The view before him was both sobering and electrifying. The German positions, now clearly visible, were thrown into disarray by the sustained Allied offensive. Men and machinery moved with frenetic energy in response to the unexpected assault. With a quick signal, Jim rallied his men, their shared determination a silent vow. They moved with purpose, engaging the enemy with calculated precision as they advanced, gaining ground with each hard-won step. Around them, the land was a tapestry of chaos and courage, each moment a heartbeat in history's unfolding narrative. Jim could feel the momentum shifting, the tide turning in favor of the relentless Allied push. Amidst the cacophony of battle, an inexorable truth emerged. They were seizing victory from the grasp of uncertainty, one painstaking inch at a time. As the morning wore on, the beachhead began to widen, the relentless assault gradually overcoming the entrenched German forces. The naval bombardment continued to rain down, unyielding in its resolve to dismantle the enemy's defenses. Amidst the smoke and fire, The collective effort of thousands was etched into every scarred inch of sand as men pressed forward in defiance of the harrowing ordeal. Jim's squad had broken through, their efforts a crucial part of the broader strategy to secure the cliffs and weaken the German hold. The skirmishes were fierce and unyielding, yet amidst the chaos, pockets of victory began to emerge, the sounds of battle interspersed with moments of triumphant relief. Riley, eyes wide with the realization of their progress, offered Jim a breathless grin amidst the pandemonium. "Lieutenant, we're doing it. We're pushing them back." Jim returned the smile, a hard-won sense of accomplishment washing over him. "We keep moving, Private. This isn't over yet." Their determination was a palpable force, an unspoken promise born from the crucible of shared adversity. As reinforcements arrived, the tide of battle turned decisively, the combined might of the Allies a relentless wave against the weary German defenses. In the heart of the action, O'Reilly was a constant presence, guiding his men with a steady hand as they pressed the advantage. His voice, both commanding and reassuring, cut through the clamor, galvanizing the soldiers as they surged forward. "Keep pushing," he urged, his words a rallying cry that spurred them onward. "We can break through, together." The hours stretched as the battle raged, each moment a testament to the unwavering spirit of those who fought with every ounce of their being. The beaches transformed from a scene of initial chaos to a strategic foothold, the Allied forces carving a path toward victory, determined to liberate not just the land, but the future it promised. Amidst the high command back in Germany, the news of the unfolding events in Normandy filtered through with stark clarity. The scale of the Allied operation became painfully evident, a masterstroke of coordination and sheer audacity that had caught the German defenses off guard. Major Hartmann, now entrenched in the logistical and strategic turmoil, received reports with a stoic resolve. The reality of the situation was undeniable. The Allies had achieved a significant breach, their tenacity and resourcefulness shaking the very foundations of German control. As he sifted through the reports, Hartmann couldn't ignore the ironic sense of admiration for the Allied forces that had orchestrated such a bold and decisive move. Yet amidst the acknowledgement of their prowess, there lay the grim understanding that his role was to counter this advance, to rally his own forces in the face of overwhelming odds. "Major, the situation is dire. The Allies are pressing forward," a fellow officer remarked, the urgency in his voice matched by the gravity of the circumstances. Hartmann met his gaze, his own resolve unyielding. "We must fortify our positions and prepare for a prolonged engagement. This is far from over." Even as the command post buzzed with frantic activity, Hartmann's mind remained clear, focused on the task at hand. Despite the challenges, he understood the importance of their resistance, the impact that each decision would have on the unfolding battle. In the quiet moments between issuing orders, he reflected on the broader scope of history unfolding around him, a narrative that would be shaped by the courage and sacrifices of individuals on all sides. As the day wore on, the skies cleared, revealing a sunlit panorama that belied the brutality of the battle raging below. The beaches, once the scene of unrelenting conflict, now bore witness to the inception of a new chapter in the Allied campaign. A foothold in Normandy, a beacon of hope in the quest for liberation. Jim and his men, weary yet invigorated, regrouped amidst the makeshift shelters that dotted the newly secured territory. The initial waves had subsided, replaced by the steady flow of reinforcements and supplies that promised to solidify their position. Amidst the aftermath, Jim took a moment to reflect, his thoughts a tapestry woven with the threads of courage, loss, and resilience. The faces of those who had fought alongside him lingered in his mind, each one a vital part of the mission that had seemed impossible mere hours before. Riley, his youthful exuberance tempered by the day's ordeal, approached with a satisfied grin. "Lieutenant, we did it. We held on." Jim nodded, appreciating the optimism that shone through the grime and exhaustion. "We did, Riley, and we'll keep holding. This is just the beginning." As they shared a brief but meaningful silence, the enormity of their achievement settled over them. Despite the losses, despite the chaos, they had prevailed, transforming the beaches of Normandy into a stepping stone toward freedom and victory. In the coming days, the story of their valor would spread, a narrative of determination that would inspire others to join the cause, to fight for a world free from tyranny. For Jim and his men, the path forward was clear. Continue the struggle, endure the hardships, and strive for the brighter future that lay just beyond the horizon. Above the beach, on the wind-swept cliffs, Hartman stood resolute, the sun setting over the expanse of the battlefield. The day had seen both triumph and loss, a microcosm of the broader conflict that spanned continents and consumed lives. As he surveyed the landscape, Hartman felt the weight of history upon his shoulders, his thoughts a complex weave of duty, honor, and the stark realities of war. Despite the setbacks, his resolve remained firm, a testament to the unyielding spirit of those who dared to fight for what they believed in. "Major, we've received new orders. We're to regroup and prepare for a counterattack," an aide reported, breaking the contemplative silence. Hartman nodded, the determination in his eyes undiminished. "Very well. We'll do what must be done." In the aftermath of the day's events, he understood that the struggle was far from over, that the courage and sacrifice of those who had fought on this day would continue to echo through time, shaping the course of a world forever changed by the crucible of conflict. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows over the now quiet beaches, a new dawn awaited. It was a future built upon the foundations laid by the unwavering resolve of those who had faced the crucible of war with steadfast determination and unwavering hope. The beaches of Normandy had borne witness to a pivotal moment in history, a testament to the indomitable spirit of humanity that dared to reach for freedom, no matter the cost. The legacy of D-Day would endure, a beacon of courage and sacrifice that would resonate through the ages. Thank you so much for watching this episode on Warfacts Hub. I hope you enjoyed diving into this fascinating moment in history. If you found this video informative and engaging, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more incredible stories from the past. Don't forget to hit that notification bell so you never miss an upload. Share your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear what you think. Until next time, keep exploring history with us. See you in the next episode. Today, we make history. Remember what you've trained for. Trust in your comrades and remember why we're here. We fight for freedom. We fight to end tyranny. Beside him, Private Daniel Carter clutched his rifle tighter. He was barely 20, his fingers trembling slightly against the cold metal. He exchanged a glance with his friend, Private Tom Jenkins, who sat next to him, his face pale but resolute. "You ready for this, Dan?" Tom asked, his voice barely audible over the hum of the engines. "As ready as I'll ever be," Daniel replied, trying to muster a smile. "Just stick close, all right?" Tom nodded, determination overshadowing his fear. "We've got this, mate." Meanwhile, aboard the HMS Belfast, Lieutenant Margaret Evans sat in the radio room, her headphones pressed tightly to her ears. Her heart raced as she listened to the crackling voices of commanders coordinating the naval bombardment. Her fingers danced over the dials, ensuring every message was received loud and clear. "We're relying on you, Evans," her superior, Commander William Travers, said as he passed by, his voice laced with urgency. "Keep those lines open. The men on the ground need every bit of support we can give them." "Yes, sir," Margaret replied, focusing on her task. She knew that every syllable she transmitted could mean the difference between life and death for the soldiers storming the beaches. As the first wave of landing crafts approached Omaha Beach, the sea grew rougher, the crafts pitching and rolling precariously. Inside one of those crafts, Sergeant Robert Mitchell barked orders to his men, his voice barely cutting through the roar of the surf and the distant thunder of artillery. "Stay low. Keep your heads down until you hit the sand," Mitchell shouted, gripping the edge of the craft as it lurched forward. His eyes darted to the shoreline, where the German defenses loomed ominously. The ramp dropped with a deafening clang, and chaos erupted. Gunfire rained down from the cliffs above, bullets slicing through the air and the shallow water. Mitchell plunged into the surf, the cold shock of the water stealing his breath. He stumbled forward, urging his men onward. "Go, go, go!" Private Daniel Carter hit the water next, the impact nearly knocking him off his feet. The beach was a scene of pandemonium, soldiers scrambling for cover amid the hail of bullets and exploding shells. He caught sight of Tom, who was struggling to keep his footing. Daniel reached out, grabbing his friend's arm and pulling him upright. "We need to get to the shingle," Daniel yelled over the din, pointing to the low ridge of pebbles ahead that offered the only semblance of cover. Together they fought their way forward, the world around them a blur of smoke, sand, and blood. They dove behind the shingle, gasping for breath, their hearts pounding in their chests.